Welcome to the Personal Trainer Hustle. Personal Trainer Hustle. If you didn't know, you do now.
All right, let's get into rates, you guys. Let's get into a simple method to increasing your personal training rates over time. Okay, so that's what we're talking about today. Welcome back to the Personal Trainer Hustle. I am your host, Sam Lopez. I am the host of Personal Trainer Hustle, also the owner of a personal training gym in Los Angeles called Logic Fitness. That is my main business. And this podcast is a way to connect with you guys and share some lessons in personal training, right? Specifically in the career of personal training. So we're not talking about the squats and the lunges. We're talking about clients and charging clients and how do we deal with that side of our personal training career. So let's get into today's topic. Today's topic, like I said, it's about how do we increase the rates? You know, it's a common question that we have. Number one, we have to kind of establish what rates we are going to charge. And then from there, we want to be able to charge more, right? So we're going to talk about that. Are we starting too high? Are we starting too low? You know, how do we figure that out and how do we increase over time? That's what we're talking about today. So if any of you guys want to send in your questions, sometimes we do Q&A episodes. And that is when I get on here and I answer one of your questions. So today is not one of those episodes. Today, I'm just giving you guys some tips and strategies around an idea. But other times we do Q&As. So the best way you guys can do that is go to personaltrainerhustle.com and send in your questions that way. And if not, you can also follow me on Instagram at personaltrainerhustle. That's me. You guys can DM me. Send me, a message or a question. Sometimes I put out questions too, and based on what you guys answer, we create more episodes that way. So there's just many ways that this all kind of flows, but that's just taking care of upfront business here with you guys. Let's get into today's episode. So the first thing when it comes to your rates, right? Before you even know how to increase the rates, we first have to establish what your baseline rate is going to be. Now, that can be kind of tricky, right? How do we figure that out? How do we figure out our worth? Well, that's a very difficult question to answer in the beginning because you don't really know what your training is worth. All you know is what your competition is charging, right? So again, this number is kind of whatever we want it to be, okay? Especially when we work for ourselves, when we have our own personal training brands and companies, there's nothing to stop you from charging $500 per session. There's nothing to stop you from charging $15 per session, right? These are numbers that you're going to have to just figure out. So one of the best ways that most of us figure out what to charge is just kind of looking around and seeing what the normal going rate is for what we have, right? So we have a very similar product. So my suggestion when you don't know is to first start by looking around or calling around or going to local gyms, maybe, talking to the trainers and just figuring out about what is it that people charge in your area, because every area is different, right? Even in a city, depending on what town in a city you're in, the rate may be a little bit different, right? Maybe you live in a neighborhood where people are more affluent. Maybe they invest more in their health and their fitness, right? So they're probably trainers there probably charge more. Maybe in areas where it's not as prevalent, it's harder to get clients. People don't really invest in their health. Maybe it's a little less. I don't know. There's so many ways, but it's just something to think about, you guys. When you're very lost about how much you should charge, the best thing to do is to look around and just kind of get an idea as to what people are charging. But this is my first big point. It's not about how much people are charging. It's not about how much you charge. The number one thing that we have to figure out, once you've looked around, once you've settled on a rate that feels right for you, this is actually the first piece of advice and the first piece of conversation that I have to have with you, right? You guys know this. I have to keep it real with you guys. It's the only way that we're going to get better, right? So this is something that maybe people don't talk to you about enough, but I have to bring this up. It's not about how much you charge. It's about how much people are willing to pay. And that is a different number. It may be the same, but it might be different. So maybe you live somewhere where you're like, okay, the going rate is $80 per session. So I'm going to charge 80, or maybe I'm going to go lower, right? I'm going to charge 70. Maybe I'm going to go higher, right? My value, I feel like it's more. I have more certifications, I have more experience. I'm going to go 90. Whatever you decide to do, this is the reality check that all of us as trainers need, including myself with my business, right? The reality check is no matter what number you put out there, the number that is real is the number that people are willing to pay. So it doesn't matter what you say you charge. What matters is how much you're actually charging for your services. And this is a very difficult thing to come to terms with. To come to terms with you putting your rate at $80 and realizing that people really only feel comfortable investing $60 in your training, right? And again, these are just random numbers I'm making up. It could be the difference from 100 to 80. It could be the difference from 200 to 150. Whatever it is, again, depending on your skills, depending on your market, depending on your branding, all of these things, it gives you a different starting rate, right? So the numbers don't matter, right? You just know that, you guys. The numbers I use are just example numbers, right? I try to keep them fairly realistic for what I've seen in the industry, but still, they're just examples, right? Or possibilities. So let's say the going rate is 80 and you decide I'm going to go 70. But after 5, 10 people that try your workout, you still don't have clients, then obviously the value of $70 per training session isn't there, right? They don't see it, or else they would have exchanged. And this is what we call, if you guys are going to have your own brands, your own companies, this is something that every business person has to come to terms with. And even trainers that work at a gym, you have to come to terms with this, because a lot of gyms also have tier systems, right? So you charge a certain amount and then you get a cut of that amount, right? Because you're working through the gym. They're providing leads, they're providing equipment, they're providing a lot of things, right? So the same rule applies everywhere you go. And this is what a lot of you guys have to realize, especially a lot of you guys that feel like you want to be on your own, you want to have your own private personal training, right? This is what you have to come to terms with that you don't think about when you're an employee. And this is a big issue. And it's this: you are now working in the free market. And what the free market is, it's simply, if you guys want to think about this in a popular term that we have now, it is consent. Okay? We are dealing now in business. Business is consent. I know a lot of people like to think about business in so many weird and terrible ways lately, right? The word capitalism has gotten a terrible reputation, right? Free market. A lot of people don't understand, but the reality is you cannot change consent. And that's all business is. It's consent. So what's happening is when you are saying that this session is $70, you're asking for their consent to charge them that, and they're saying no, right? So that's the free market that you live in, right? There's no way around it. The reality is that your rate is going to be whatever people consent to paying for that rate. And you have to think about it like that. But this is the difficult part of it, is that when you work for a company, the company establishes a rate, and sometimes people get away with doing little work for a certain pay. Sometimes people get away with not working, but sometimes people overwork and still get underpaid, right? So what happens normally in a work setting is that the company is establishing a rate. Whether you work a lot or whether you work a little, it's kind of about the same. When you are in personal training, now you are actually dealing more directly with the reality of the world. And that is, people pay what they believe the value of this training session, your program, your gym, your plan, your personality, all of this combined, they are deciding what it's actually worth. And this is what we need to come to terms with, is that if you have it set at 80, 100, 200, but people, when they try it, are not making a commitment to work with you, then they are saying this is not worth what you are charging. Now, again, not everybody has to sign up. Maybe you already know, hey, I know I'm not going to get some people, but I am going to get others because some people sign up for this rate. That's fine. You just have to be realistic and know, okay, only 1 out of every 5 people that I meet is going to sign up at this rate, and I'm okay with that. But I am going to guess that most of you guys just wish you had more clients. You just wish more people were signing up. So, this is the first thing that you need to figure out, and that is, what is my training actually worth? Right? So, once you figure that out, now you have a good starting point. So, how do you figure that out? Well, there's two ways to go about it. You can start high and begin to drop your rate until you figure out what people are willing to pay, or you can start low and start to increase your pay until you figure out where people stop paying you, right? So that I'm going to leave up to you to think logically and reasonably about what you feel comfortable doing. Do you feel comfortable starting high and going low, or do you feel more comfortable starting low and going high, right? Again, this is just my personal advice, my personal tips. This is not, founded on any type of data that I've collected other than my own personal experience being a personal trainer and being a gym owner and knowing personal trainers and working out at different gyms, getting to know other trainers. This is just a common theme that I have found. And so that's where my advice is coming from. Like I said, a lot of people aren't going to be this real with you, right? Most people tell you, know your worth, charge what you're worth. But here's the thing. The market decides what you're worth, right? You can be dead set on, no, I know that this is worth $150. You could be, but if the market does not see it that way, then you still have a big fat zero at the end of the month. And that's what we're trying to avoid. I would rather you have 100 by the end of the month and build from there than to start set at 150 and continue to lose clients and not figure out what's going on, right? And we're going to talk about value as we move forward, but for me personally, I would rather you guys kind of go a little bit lower than the normal rate that's out there. And I'm talking to you guys that are just starting off, that you're really trying to figure out how to get the ball rolling, right? Because some of you guys may be listening, you have more experience, you have some clients, right? So hopefully you guys get some other tips for different things I'm talking about today. But this is really about that starting phase where you just are struggling to sign people up, right? You started your own garage gym, whatever, mobile training, and you don't know what's going on. For me, what I have realized, what tends to work is to lowball it a little bit. Now, you don't want to completely undervalue or devalue your services, right? You also don't want to do $5, $10, $15 sessions, whatever that number is, because at that point, it's not worth the gas that it takes to go see somebody, right? But again, that's not to say you can't start there, right? I know trainers that have started at like $10 a session in the park, and they were able to build their entire career from there to where they got to more normal rates eventually. So I'm not saying you don't do it. It's just there's also a fine line of like completely undervaluing your time. So it just depends how desperate you are and how much you want to win. If you just want to get clients, so you have videos, so you start practicing, then maybe you go real low, right? I don't know that perfect number. Like I said, it's what people are willing to pay. But if you go too low, right, people know like this is not really that great. Maybe maybe I need to invest a little more. So there's a sweet spot. My advice, just things that I've noticed, is to think about maybe going lower and starting from the bottom up, right? So I'll give you an example of how that works, right? You start at 50 and then you're going to figure out, okay, maybe they're paying for a $50 session, but maybe it's really worth 60. But now that I'm practicing, I'm going to have a better idea as to what this is really worth, right? So number one, I want to tie it with a nice little bow before we move on. Number one is figuring out what the market is actually paying you, and it's about acceptance. Once you figure out what that number is that people say yes to, right? Because again, I've met a lot of trainers that tell me how much they charge, but they don't have clients. So what I always say to trainers like that is I always say, well, so then you don't really charge that much because nobody's paying. Until somebody's paying, it's not real, right? It's just the idea of how much I want to pay. It's not the reality of how much, it's the idea of how much I want to charge. It's not the reality of how much people are willing to pay, right? So the first thing you need to establish is, what is a rate where people say yes to my service, right? And even within a gym, they have tiers, right? So you have to establish, okay, I am at least worth this rate because I signed up 3 people, 5 people, 10 people, and they all said yes to this rate. Once you figure out that number, you have what I call your baseline rate. This is what you figured out people are actually willing to pay. And the beauty of it is now you've gotten the ball rolling. You have some clients, you can get some videos, you can get some testimonials, right? You can get some referrals. You can begin to move the ball forward when you just have simple acceptance of what your training is actually worth, right? And so that's a tough pill to swallow sometimes, but it's the best because it's going to show you the truth. And only with the truth will you be able to move forward. So you have to do that. And so, number two, from there, you have to figure out how to increase your value, right? How to increase your value and collect proof of your value. So let's say you know that your sessions and your program, it's worth a lot more. Okay, but this person signed up for less. Okay, that's all fair and good. It's time now to prove your value. So how do you do that, right? You're going to prove to this person that they made a great investment, even though it's lowball, maybe, right? To you, even though it's the reality to them, but you're going to show them that you have a lot more value and you're giving them a lot more value than what they're worth. This is just business principles here. And you want to collect proof of that value. So now you have the opportunity to collect proof through testimonials, through photographs, through posts, right? To show what you can actually do. So now, if you really believe you're that great a trainer, then you have, let's say, 1 month, 3 months, 6 months to show the progression of the person that said yes to you. And now that value can be brought to the next person, right? So now you can create a presentation and said, hey, this is what I did for Joanne. This is what I did for Chris, right? This is his story, right? You saw the video. You saw the testimonial. This is what I did for Chris. And so now, if you want to work with me, this is the magic, you guys. It's a little bit more. And you're going to try to go up because now you have proven it to yourself, you've proven it to your client, and you're proving it to the next potential client. You have created value and proof of that value. And now you can flip that to a higher rate because now it's not just guessing. Now you know what it's worth, right? And value can be many different things. Obviously, value is the results, but also value can be in the way that you set up your training, value in the way that you keep them accountable, right? That's another great area where you can increase the value. You can increase the value in the technical aspect of your training, right? How good is your training? How hands-on is it, right? How good are you at progressing someone through their exercises, right? Because it's not just weight loss, it's not just pictures, but can you put somebody on a program where they got rid of their pain? That's adding value. Can you put someone in a program where they gained, 10, 20 pounds on their squat or 10, 20 pounds of muscle, right? There's so many different ways to add value. You can have an email program where you email them every week. You can have a weekly video, a daily video, a daily text, a daily email. A separate program, a channel where you do videos specifically for your clients. Like there's so many ways, and this is where your business, and this is, you guys, where certain businesses beat other businesses. How creative can you get? How specific can you get? How much value can you add to your training so that people, right, if all training costs the same, where do they get more value? Right? Because again, right, when somebody signs up, they're just thinking that they're going to sign up for a trainer that keeps them accountable and works them out and pushes them. But when you show them you have other things to add value to your training, that's where we get separation from winners and losers, or from people that win at higher levels than other. It's about the creativity and the value and the systems and the programs and the environment and this that we create around our training, right? So if I have AC at my gym and you don't have AC at the park, that is a simple value that I bring by bringing them to my space, right? But maybe if you go to their home and you train in their driveway, let's say, you don't have the added value of having AC, but you have the added value that they didn't have to drive anywhere, so you save them time. This, again, it's about you knowing what value you are bringing and all the different ways you're bringing value to that training session and to that client as a whole. And so again, this is where you get to be creative and also realistic about what you're bringing people. But again, this is step number two is once you have some baseline clients, once you figured out what that rate that they're willing to pay is, that's your real rate. Well, now you can start to figure out and practice how to add value to this person so that they refer you other people, so that you get testimonials, so that you get proof, so that you create awareness of your brand in the community, right? Give them something to talk about. And so now the more people that come to you through post, through referrals, through whatever the method is, well, now you have a way to try a higher rate. People are going to be more likely to pay a little bit more because they see now what you're doing, right? But you could have never shown them what you do. You could have never practiced different value add-ons. You could have never gotten the results and the before and afters if you didn't have someone to start with, right? So you want to start with the baseline and then begin to add value so that you feel more comfortable charging more, because that's another part of charging more is a lot of us feel completely uncomfortable because we have no idea what our baseline is, right? We don't really know if what we say we're going to do is what we're going to be able to deliver on. And so it's hard to look at someone and say, it's this much money to train with me when you don't even believe that it's worth that, right? You're not even sure. But once you start at a rate that somebody said yes to you to, whatever that number is, it gives you a little bit of confidence because somebody's paying, right? Because here's the thing, if you just go free, you can do the value, you can do the testimonials, you can do the video, sure, but it doesn't empower you. It doesn't give you that sense of your business moving forward. It doesn't give you the sense that you are worth, what any type of income, right? So when you get someone to pay something for your service and you say, okay, this is a good, maybe it's lower than what I thought, but it's a start. That now gives you a little bit of boost to say, okay, some people said yes. At least I have clients. I'm a real personal trainer. Maybe I'm not the most expensive trainer yet, but I've started my career and that feels good. I can see that it's moving forward. I can see clients. I can start figuring out my programs. I can start figuring out a referral system. I can start figuring out a nutrition system, whatever it is. Now you have real people to start with. But the more important thing is you're getting some income, and which gives you a little bit of confidence that at least at the minimum, this is definitely worth this. And now you're going to start to ascend from that number based on your experience now, based on the value that you're adding, right? And when I say experience, it's like now you're getting experience of training. So now you're going to have a better feel for how to sell training, how to talk about the program, how to talk about what you're going to do, right? Your sales pitch becomes better, right? Because also the ability to sell and know what to say during a sales presentation is also part of getting people to pay higher rates. When you're new, you don't know what to say because you haven't done it. But once you start training a few people, now you know the common questions. Now you can talk to your clients and say, hey, what was it about training with me that drew you in? I'm really curious because I want to know what the next clients are going to want to hear from me. And your clients, now you have a real feedback loop where they're going to say, oh, it was really the way you trained me. It was really the way you greeted me. It was the questions that you asked me. Now you're knowing from those clients, you're gaining knowledge and experience. You're increasing your value, you're getting proof, and this is going to add to your confidence when it comes to selling the next set of clients, right? And I don't know how many clients that'll be. Maybe you can go 3 at a time, 5 at a time, right? Let's just use the example of 5. You get 5 clients at that initial rate, the one that people say yes to. You do your best with those people, and then you decide, okay, the next 5, I'm going to try to increase by $5 a session, by $10 a session, right? You just increase a little bit just to see if you can close the gap a little bit more, right? It's a game of inches, as they say in sports, right? A little bit at a time, right? You hit the ball a little low and it's in, a little high and it's out, right? You run a little bit faster and you're in, you run a little bit slower and you're out, right? So it's just sometimes a little bit. And that's another part of this system, is that you don't want to go, let's say you establish it at 70 and that's what people feel comfortable with. You don't want to go, okay, my next ones are going to be 150. It might be too big of a gap. You still haven't closed, right? You don't know if you've really added enough value, enough experience, enough knowledge to close that big a gap. But you can go from 70 to 80, 70 to 85, right? You can start making, and then redo the system at 85, add more value, figure more things out. What was it about the $85 people that made them say yes, right? You do it again and you gain more information and you begin to ascend that way. That is the simple method to raising your rates that I'm talking about today. Yeah, okay. I already covered number three. Sorry, you guys, I'm just flowing here. But yeah, number three was use the value, experience, and proof to sell the next person. So we already covered that, right? Number three, just to summarize, so you guys know what number three was, because I jumped into it. But yeah, it was my whole rant about going from value and proof from one person to the next person. Okay. So we did that because number two was increase your value, collect proof. Then the third was use that value and experience to sell the next person. So we covered that. Um, yeah. Okay. Number four, right? So again, we're already kind of in it, but number four is prove your worth by having a few clients pay. But here's the other part, by having those clients stay at that rate. Okay. Because again, it's about proof, right? So we're jumping to number four here. Prove you're worth it to yourself and to the clients, not only by signing them up, which is what we've been talking about, but you also have to prove it by keeping them at that rate, because maybe you were not able to fulfill their expectations, right? Maybe you started them at 50 and you gave them a $30 service. They're going to say, you know what? It's not worth it. So again, this is long-term thinking. If you get somebody at 50, now you also have to prove that you can keep them at 50, what you gave them is at a minimum what they expected, if not more than they expected, which is better business, right? Better business is giving them more than what they thought they were going to get for what they paid. That's better. But at a minimum, you need to at least fulfill on what they wanted from that training session so that they continue to pay it over time. That is an important factor in establishing this baseline. Because that's really what you're doing, right? You have to prove that you're worth a certain rate to yourself. It's the only way that you're going to know what you're worth, but also what your business is and what your business truly sells, right? The only way to do it is to establish certain things over time so that you also know, can I consistently do this? Can I consistently do that? Right? That has happened to me before. Sometimes I have thought of ideas. I'm like, okay, we're going to add this to the training. And then I realize, this, I can't keep this up over 6 months, or I can't keep this up as my staff grows, right? I have to change that. I can't keep promising somebody this part because it's not true. I can't keep that up. It was a great idea in the beginning, but it doesn't really work, right? I'll give you an example of something that may happen to you. Maybe you're promising to build a whole program for 6 months and a dietary program, which is a great value, but you may not be able to keep that up once you have 15 clients, right? Or the rate has to be way higher because you're spending so much money. So again, right, that is the business, but the only way to figure that out is by having 15 clients, right? So again, you have to be adaptable as you go. But number four is you have to prove you're worth it by selling that package, but also by keeping people at that rate. That's how you're going to establish your baseline rate. But number five, if you can get to this part of it, you did great, because now time is money, right? Time is money, and new clients have to pay for your time. So this is the final, I guess, chapter in this ascension, right? So you've been growing your rates, right? You grow your value. Let's say you get 5 people at 50. You increase your value. You change your program, right? You increase your self-belief and your confidence, and you're able to get the next 5 people at 60. So now you have 5 at 50, 5 at 60. Now over time, people are going to drop off, right? So now that you have that, well, now maybe with 10 clients, your schedule's full. Maybe it's 15, right? Then you get another 5 at 70 clients, right? Because you just keep repeating this continuous growth of value, growth of experience, growth of confidence, right? So now you have 5 at 50, 5 at 60, and 5 at 70. You're probably getting a little capped out with the amount of clients you can take care of, right? And you can go another 5 at 80, whatever you want to do. But okay, so I just want to establish what this looks like, right? You don't want to fill your entire schedule with people with 50 because now you're going to have to start getting rid of people. Now your time is going to be too tight. So you take it a little bit at a time and you grow and grow and grow. But ultimately, what's going to happen is now time is money. It's not even just about your value anymore, right? Now it's about you don't have time to work with everyone that wants to work with you. You guys, this may take a year. It may take 3 years to get here. Okay. It may take 5 years to get here. I don't know. Right. All I can say is, I was able to build a company where this is a reality for me. Right. There is no way that one of the trainers, either myself or Sean or Brittany or anybody on staff, there's no way that one of them could take care of everyone that's coming into the gym. It would be just physiological impossibility, right? Time would not allow to train everybody. That's why we have to split the clients up amongst a few of us, right? So what is that? That is time is money, right? I don't have time to work with people. So we have to divide the time up between all of us. Now, again, even within that system, some trainers are getting busier and busier, which means their tier is higher, their levels is higher, and their payout is higher. So even within a system, this still is true, you guys. This system of growing your value, being busy and establishing being busy first, right? In case I missed that, that's what I'm trying to tell you guys about this simple method of raising your rates is when you're busy, the final step is that your time is money. So if I have 15 clients, I can now decide, okay, I'm making enough money. I'm going to have to bump my 50s up to 60s if they want to stay with me. If they don't, I'm willing to lose them now because I'm getting enough people at 80, right? So now you have the power to start to increase the lower levels and start to bring them up, right? You can bring the 50s up to 60s, and now at least half of your people are at 60 and the other half are at 70, 80. And then over time, you can repeat that process. Your 60s have to be up to 70s. And because now you have people paying 90 or 100, right? The system is cyclical. But here's the thing, you have to establish your baseline at every rate. You have to prove it to yourself, prove it to your clients, right? And use those clients as momentum to get to the next clients through testimonials, through before and afters, through referrals, whatever it is that you're doing. You establish, and eventually now you are a popular trainer, right? People are calling you, people are coming. And like I said, it takes years, you guys. It might take years to get to this popular level. But if you can start at a real point, begin to build your client base. And again, you got to keep working the whole way through. You got to keep increasing your value, proving it, increasing your business savvy, increasing your training skills, right? The moment you get stuck, that's it. But if you keep growing, the final step is time is money, right? It's not even so much that my training is that valuable, right? It's not even anything that I'm adding to it. It's just as simple as I have enough clients that want to work with me that I now have the ability to say, hey, if you want to work with me, right? I'm very busy. If you want to, I can do it, but it has to be 120. If you can't do it, I completely understand. I have a personal trainer friend who I refer people to, and I'll give you his or her number. You guys can work out. They're really great. You guys can take it one step further, right? If I was in charge of this system, which I kind of do in my gym, I would tell you guys, if you're really that busy, you can have a trainer friend that's just starting off and say, hey, I'm going to charge them, my lead, if they can't sign up for my 120, I'm going to charge them 80 and I'm going to give them to you. And I'm just going to keep the first 2 sessions payment, right? So I'll charge you 160. And then you keep the client, you train all the sessions that they signed up for, right? So let's say 10 sessions. I'm going to sign them up for 10 sessions, refer them to you, and I am going to keep 160, give you the rest. Once you finish the 10 sessions with them, you can keep them going at 80. And now you just made a commission and you're not training them anymore. This is super high level, you guys. And at that point, you might as well think about having your own gym because that's kind of what I've done, right? Only when I got to the level where I could sell more training than I can train, did I think, okay, I need a staff, I need a space, I need staff, I need to help other trainers in their career as well, right? This podcast was not the first thing I did, right? The only way I can do this is because now there's enough clients coming in and enough trainers training them where now I have some time to do this. So, you guys, everything is systematic, everything is one level at a time. You can't start at the end. That's why sometimes I tell you, you guys are so worried about followers and likes, and you're missing the point. The point is you need to train somebody so that they pay you some money so that you start to create a reputation, because that's your job. If you are a personal trainer, if you're listening to the Personal Trainer Hustle, you're a personal trainer working with people, training people, programming real people in your neighborhood, right? Or if you're online, it's still the same thing. It's a real person logging on to train your program. So either way, you're dealing with real people. So the reality is you have to build a baseline client base, build from there, increase the value, increase what your time is worth, and then you have a lot of different options with what you want to do with your time. Now you can worry about creating a personal brand, starting a podcast, starting a channel, starting a gym, starting a brand, starting more boot camps if your boot camp has gotten big enough, right? It's all about scaling things, but you can't do that. You can't start at the end, right? So that's for me. Like I said, it's just what I think. It's not what you have to do or what you should do. It's just what I think. A simple method to growing your rates and growing your client base is by establishing a certain client base at a certain number and building on top of that until you outgrow where you were, right? And it's better to do it that way. In my opinion, it's better to do it that way than being set on when I get a client, it has to be this rate. That's what all the trainers charge. That's what my certification said. That's what my, motivational, inspirational guru online said, that I have to stick to this. That can work, you guys, but the reality is deep down inside, if we don't truly believe it and if we don't truly know what it takes, it's actually going to make it harder for us. We're going to start to lose belief. We're going to start to lose time, lose money, lose belief, right? And eventually now you feel defeated. So now when you start the process over again, now you have this baggage you're carrying with you because the higher rates didn't work, right? Starting a big gym right off the bat because it didn't work. Now you may feel defeated. It's better to stack and stack and stack. In my opinion, it's better to stack and stack and stack and grow that way. It's just my opinion. And now, like I said, the final step, your time is money. Now it's just about people are calling you, people are referring to you. If you want, you take them at a certain rate. If you don't want, whatever, it's no problem. You can reject at that point. But again, I'm just talking you through it, but this is a process that takes dedication, commitment. It takes time. It takes intentionality. It takes growth. It's not as simple as, okay, that sounds great. I'm going to start at $20 and go from there. You still have to build value, build your brand, deliver on your promises, right? Have a website, grow your socials, read books. There's still a lot of work that has to go into it, but it is a way that I have found that has worked for me. It's worked for the manager at my gym, Sean. It's working for some of my trainers at the gym. It's a method that works, but if you're committed long term and if you're growing the value, okay? It's not the end all be all. A lot of things in life aren't just this is the only way. There's many ways to get things done. This is just a way that I have applied that has worked for me. That's all I'm sharing with you guys today. Something that worked for me to be able to get me to have my gym, to be able to hire people, to be able to start a podcast like this for free for you guys. This is the method that I used. I started low and I built my career from there over years. Okay. So I'm just sharing that in case you guys are like, what do I do? How much do I charge? Where do I go from here? To me, everything we talked about today is a simple way that you can confidently build step by step, brick by brick, start to build your client base and increase your rates and increasing your brand and everything like that. All right. So again, you guys follow me at Personal Trainer Hustle on Instagram. Send me a DM. And if you guys want to send in a question at personaltrainerhustle.com, you guys can go to that as well. I'm going to link it in the episode bio. So, when you're listening to this, if you open it up, the details about this episode, you can find the Instagram and the website right there. So I make it as easy as possible. You guys can click and it'll take you right to what you're looking for instead of having to go out there and type it all over again. All right. Thank you guys for listening. That is today's episode on the Personal Trainer Hustle, and I will talk to you guys soon.